Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just bear with us as people are just joining us on this seminar. Won't be long. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today, the peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining us online today. Good morning, my name is George Descala and I'm from Global Victoria. Welcome to the third and final in a series of briefings that we're undertaking with the Victorian eCommerce Network. All three series have been focused on the China market. I would particularly like to thank our partners in hosting this briefing, Asialink Business, and also in particular our speakers for today, which are from Alibaba, Swiss and IP Australia. Global Victoria has put a lot of time and effort into the China market. We have 5 offices in China, there to support companies to interact and to engage, and particularly through this period of COVID-19, and we look forward to working with you further on the market. That's enough from me. I'll now pass over to Nick Henderson, who will moderate today's session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, and good morning to everybody. My name is Nick Henderson, Director of China Practice at Asialink Business, and it's great to be with you today for this event. We have some great expertise on our panel today who will provide insights into our topic, which is how to protect your IP in China's booming cross-border e-commerce market. China's e-commerce retail sector has seen significant growth over the past decade, currently valued at around $4.3 trillion US dollars, with growth rates exceeding 17% year on year. Cross-border e-commerce, which is a widely used channel by Australian brands, is also growing strongly at over 24% year on year as of first half 2019. China's e-commerce platforms and supporting ecosystems, including online payments, digital marketing, logistics, and so on, transact huge volumes of product and merchandise value on a daily basis. This covers a massive range of domestically produced and imported products and brands that serve a myriad and growing product consumption needs of China's population. For Australian companies selling or planning to sell through e-commerce channels in China, the importance of protecting IP is critical. China's IP processes, regulations, and enforcement environment is vastly different to Australia. The need to understand and navigate this effectively is crucial to avoid making common mistakes that are made that cause significant challenges for businesses. Our speaker, David Bennett from IP Australia, will discuss more on this in a moment. Alibaba is a dominant player in China's steadily growing digital economy and operates the largest e-commerce platforms. They provide intellectual property protection mechanisms to assist in protecting key IP for listed brand owners. And Mick Ryan and Stephanie Yu from Alibaba will provide further insights on that in a moment. Many Victorian companies have created success in the China market through effectively leveraging e-commerce channels and digital marketing. Swiss, over a number of years, has grown their business in China exponentially through cross-border e-commerce and general trade channels to a fastly growing health and wellness, vitamins and supplements category. We will hear from Jia Pei, who will share insights on how IP protection has been a central consideration in this growth. Before I introduce our first panelists, just some housekeeping for this event. We have some time set aside at the end of this event for Q&A. We welcome your questions, and it's a good opportunity for you to ask them. And if you'd like to submit one as we go through the event, please do so by clicking the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you have a particular question for a particular panelist, please feel free to specify that in the question, and we will aim to answer as many questions as time permits. Firstly, it's my pleasure to introduce David Bennett. David is IP Australia's first intellectual property counsellor to China, based at the Australian Embassy in Beijing, although in Australia at the moment due to COVID. He provides Australians with practical guidance on how to protect their IP in China and supports Australia's engagement with China on IP policy issues. David is a registered trademark attorney and former biotechnology patent examiner. I'd now like to warmly welcome David Bennett.
Okay, thanks very much for the kind introduction, Nick, and to George and Global Victoria for hosting. There we go. So I'm very happy that today the third and final webinar in this series has focused on intellectual property because it is so important. It can make or break your business in China. Today, I'm going to explain some of the main risks that you'll face, but how you can manage and mitigate those risks and give yourself the best chance of success. My slides have lots of hyperlinks to more information. You can access those later when you get a copy of the slides. If you have any questions of relevance to everyone, please ask them in the allocated question time. But if you want to ask me about your specific circumstances, you can contact me and our China team directly. So what's your biggest IP risk in China? Most people automatically think counterfeit goods, but for many of you, that's not actually going to be the biggest risk. The biggest risk that I see by far is bad faith trademark applications. That has happened to Penfolds, very famously, happened to Michael Jordan. It can happen to anyone. The second risk is businesses using poorly drafted contracts that don't protect their interests in China. Now, if your product becomes successful and popular in China past a certain threshold, you may face the third risk, counterfeit and copycat products. But the good news is if you've addressed these first two risks and put things in place, you'll be well prepared to deal with this should it emerge. So these are risks, but they are manageable. And that's what I'm going to focus on for the rest of my presentation. So I work for IP Australia. We administer the IP systems in Australia. I'm usually based in Beijing at the Australian Embassy, where I give guidance on how Australians can protect their IP in China. I give guidance and support on specific inquiries, but not legal advice or services. I'll help you understand the issues and how you might tackle them, and then I'll point you towards appropriate legal services for your next steps. Now, IP is not protected automatically. It depends what it is. So copyright applies automatically to creative works, such as a book or an artistic work, but copyright's the exception. If you've developed a new brand, invention, or a new design, and you want to protect it, you have to take active steps to do that through applying to register IP rights. We have trademarks protecting brands, patents protecting inventions, and designs protecting the visual appearance of products. Now, I've highlighted trademarks here because for most businesses, this is going to be your most important IP asset, and a trademark registration is also probably your best bang for buck. Let's have a look at an example of how IP protects a product. So ResMed's CPAP device here is a great Australian invention. Of course, it's protected by patents for the inventions, but then also trademarks, designs, copyright, and trade secrets protect different elements. Let's look at a less high-tech product. Carmen's. IP is just as important for Carmen's products as it is for ResMed. Most importantly, it's trademarks that protect their brand. The thing to understand about IP rights is that they are territorial. So if you have a trademark or a patent registered in Australia, it only protects you in Australia. If you want to be protected in another market, in mainland China, in the USA, in Japan, or any other market, you have to register in that territory. So think about registering IP rights in any markets you want to do business or manufacture in. When we talk about China, there's different territories, different legal systems requiring different registrations. So mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan all have separate systems with separate registration. There's no such thing as an international patent or trademark. What we do have is international systems that make it easier to file in multiple countries. As I said, copyright applies automatically, but China and some other countries have an optional copyright registration system, which you really need to do in practice if you're going to enforce. Whenever people talk about the Chinese market, especially in an e-commerce context, you'll be told repeatedly it's all about your brand. It's about having a strong brand, building your brand. Most critical is to protect your brand, and you do this by registering trademarks. So a trademark is any sign that can distinguish your goods or services from those of others. It's usually going to be a word or a logo or a combination. In order to be registered, the trademark has to be distinctive. so not purely descriptive, and has to not conflict with any prior registrations. Your brand is only protected in China once you have a registered trademark in China. China is different to Australia. It has a first-to-file trademark system. What this means, in short, is that with few exceptions, the first person to apply for a trademark gets it. This is exploited by trademark squatters or hijackers who register other companies' trademarks in order to seek a payout to sell the mark or use it as cover for their own counterfeit products. This is the most common IP issue affecting Australian companies in China, by far. I understand people want to cut costs, but this is absolutely essential. You should not be doing test sales or testing the market and thinking you'll register your trademark later if it looks promising, because that will generally become too late. The only real way to manage this risk effectively is to register the trademarks in China well before you enter the market. I would say before you exhibit at trade fairs, before you have any business discussions with potential Chinese partners. Also, do check to see if Daigou are already selling your products in China. I've seen many companies actually discover that their products are for sale through Daigou in China when they weren't aware of it. I'm going to quickly share 2 real-life examples of what can happen if you don't register trademarks in China. First example here is a small but successful Australian wine company. They sold their products in China through local distributors but didn't register their trademark. That was fine for a few years until last year, when someone else registered their trademark and sued them and their distributors for trademark infringement. Facing this long and costly legal battle, they're most likely going to abandon the market. This second example is a large and successful Australian skincare company. Someone else registered their trademark in China. This blocked them then from setting up their flagship e-commerce store or selling through distributors or other retailers. Their access to the Chinese market was really limited then to Daigou and cross-border e-commerce channels, so they could get around these things. It took them 10 years of court battles before they got their trademark back. So from both these cases, the lesson is, if you're interested in the Chinese market, which obviously you are if you're watching this webinar, register your trademarks in China as early as possible. Okay, how to register trademarks in China. Strongly suggest you consult a trademarks attorney. These are professionals, trademark professionals to assist you. It's good you've got 2 options essentially: go through an Australian trademarks attorney or go direct to an agent in China. And these have pros or cons. Going through an Australian attorney will cost more because they act as a middleman to go to a Chinese agent. If they're good, they'll have value add for you and strategic advice, but you have to make sure you find a good attorney. If you want to be more cost effective, you can go directly to an agent in China, and if you want some potential referrals, you can get in touch with me for some of those service providers. Now, how much will it cost? The next question. As long as a piece of string, not very helpful, but costs vary depending on the attorney's fees. Basically, the official costs are quite low. The attorney fees are the main component, but you should be looking at within $1,000 to $2,000. Get a quote, get some quotes before you pursue any work, and shop around as well. Key tip is to manage your own registrations yourself. So if partners in China, importers, distributors, or others offer to take care of it for you, just be quite cautious, because your trademark registrations should be done in your own name. And with over 24 million registered trademarks in China, doing a search of the trademarks register can help you avoid wasting time and money on trademark applications likely to be rejected, and avoid infringing others' trademarks. We've got a guide to searching a Chinese trademarks register available on our website that can help get you started with a basic search. Now, depending on your product, particularly if it's a consumer product, it may be beneficial to have a Chinese language trademark in addition to an English mark. There's no one size fits all. Whether or not it's appropriate for you will depend on your business. There are several approaches here: transliteration, translation, combination. But the point I want to make is that this is branding and marketing. It's not merely a translation, a mechanical translation. There are branding and marketing professionals who can help develop a good brand. As part of the brand development process, you want to check the Chinese trademark register for existing registrations, so you don't waste time on something that infringes others or you can't protect. And then you want to apply to register the trademarks in China before you reveal the brand. Otherwise, you might risk someone else registering it before you. Carmen's, they're in Melbourne, have a great Chinese brand, Kung Ao Mai. They registered their English and their Chinese language trademarks in China well ahead of entering the market, and I see them all over stores in Beijing. Designs, quick note, designs are one of the most underutilized IP rights. If you've come up with a new design, that means the visual appearance of a product that differs from prior designs, you can protect that through a design right. In China, it's called a design patent. In Australia, it's a registered design. If you've got a new design, read more on our website. Most importantly, applications need to be filed before you make your design public. If you're selling consumer products in China, copyright can be useful. It protects creative works, what's the relevance to consumer goods, to your product images, and some of your written materials on your products as well. This means if someone copies your copyright protected product images and uses them for their own e-commerce listings, for example, you can use your copyright as the basis to enforce against them. You often have to register your copyright with Chinese authorities before you can enforce. Our local lawyer can advise you on that process. I've often seen Australians use bad contracts in China that don't protect their interests. You can't simply adapt an Australian style contract. It's very important to get local legal advice on your contracts with China. We've just released a whole range of resources and tips on our website, so follow this link and have a look at those. In your context, you might be looking at import, distribution, sales agreements, for example, or contract manufacturing. If you're doing business in China, you're probably going to need a contract sooner or later. Now, if your product is below a certain threshold of popularity, it's probably unlikely to be targeted by infringers. They'll go for something more popular. But if you do get popular, there is a real risk of counterfeit or infringing products. And this is often sold on e-commerce platforms, such a common medium of sales. So if you find infringing listings, pretty much all the platforms have online IP platforms to handle IP complaints. So that's Alibaba, JD, Pinduoduo, and also Amazon, eBay, any platform you can think of. The general process here is you register an account, upload evidence of your IP right, and file your complaint against infringing listings. Our speakers from Alibaba are going to talk more about their brand protection work in detail after me, so I won't go into detail on these processes. If you're filing a complaint about product listings in China, you're generally going to need a registered Chinese IP right, such as a Chinese trademark, patent, or copyright. The e-commerce platforms are always trying to make the process easier for small businesses, and they're going to talk more about that in a minute. But some companies that have serious issues with infringements do find it most efficient to outsource this process to a specialist online brand protection company, such as those I've listed here on this slide. Go to the next slide. So if you make your product harder to copy through anti-counterfeit measures, it's less likely to be copied. Simple as that. If you're a harder target, you're less likely to get targeted. There are a whole range of anti-counterfeit measures commercially available that you can apply to your products. No one size fits all, so what's most appropriate for you will depend on your business, your product, and its value. These generally fall into a couple of categories. Overt features are those that are visible to the consumer, and covert are those that are secret, invisible, that only those who know to look for them can detect. Using these things will help distinguish real and fake products should you need to, and help reassure your consumers and local partners about your goods. Going next slide. Sorry, my control of the slides is dropping off. There we go. So the same applies for authenticity verification technologies. I've just given an example here, one Australian company, Lava, and their product is applied to a number of products going into the Chinese market to offer verification and tracking. All right, next slide. So my take-home messages are: register your trademarks in China, register them at the earliest opportunity. It really is your cheapest China insurance policy. Get local legal advice on your contracts, such as import and distribution agreements, and get those done right. Now, these two are essential, and if you've got them done right, then you'll be well equipped to take enforcement actions should you need them. I haven't talked in detail about enforcement other than on the e-commerce platforms. You can get in touch with me or look for more on our website about that. So now, desirable is to be a difficult target. That means enforcing your IP both online and offline using the platform complaint systems, and also thinking about some of these anti-counterfeiting and traceability measures that will make your products harder to copy. You want to make yourself less attractive to copy so that counterfeiters go for something else. And last slide, further resources. We've got a lot more information on IP Australia's China web resources at ipaustralia.gov.au/China, so please do have a read. If you want to discuss your specific circumstances with me and our China team, you can get in touch here at chinaip@ipaustralia.gov.au. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for your detailed insights and examples, which really brought the issues to life in a practical way. Particularly like that takeaway slide, which obviously gives key insights as to what are some of the things to really follow up on. And I encourage you to take a look at the IP Australia online resources, which are fantastic and really comprehensive. And just one thing, I guess, to touch on again, that the biggest risk is bad faith registration of trademarks. And in my experience in China, I've seen it happen so many times. So if there's one key takeaway from my side on what David mentioned is that. So that's obviously something to bear into mind. So it's my pleasure now to introduce you to Mick Ryan, Associate Director, Brand Cooperation at Alibaba Group, and Stephanie Yu, Intellectual Property Rights Protection Manager at Alibaba Group. Mick Ryan heads up the brand cooperation team, which is responsible for supporting IP rights holders to enforce their rights, and has developed a special cooperation program for Chinese and foreign brands, the Alibaba Anti-Counterfeiting Alliance. Prior to joining Alibaba, Mick was Director of Business Environment and Head of IP at the China-Britain Business Council. Stephanie Yu is the IP Protection Manager at Global IP Enforcement Team at Alibaba Group. She works with international brands and retail partners, industry associations, government regulators, law enforcement agencies, and other organisations to advance Alibaba Group's anti-counterfeiting and IP rights protection efforts. Stephanie was central to projects with the City of London Police, from which Alibaba was awarded the UK government's first ever award for IPR excellence in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Mick Ryan and Stephanie Yu.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you very much to Global Victorian and Asialink for putting together this webinar. It's great to be able to be in touch with all of you and to share the stage with such established speakers. I'd like to just start by echoing some of David and Nick's remarks about the importance of making sure that you own your IP in China. Alibaba, as a private company, will do everything that we can to help you to enforce the IP rights that you do own in China. That is something that we're going to talk a little bit about today and about the tools that we've developed to do so. But in terms of those registrations, that's something that I think David's offered some very good advice on. So I recommend that you listen to that. And secondly, and this will be the takeaway, so I'll also start with it. I think having a proactive enforcement program is very important to do alongside your business development work. They definitely are complementary and they go hand in hand. And the more popular your brand is, the more that people will try to copy it. So it's very important that you proactively go out and to enforce your IP rights and make sure that you're the ones that are owning those rights. So see if I can go through these slides. Here we are. So our presentation today, we're going to talk a little bit about who Alibaba is, just very, very briefly. We're going to talk about our overall strategy in Alibaba for protecting the rights of brands like yourselves. And then Stephanie's going to go into quite a lot of detail about the tools that we have available to do that enforcement. We want you to be able to know how to find it. We want you to know how to use it. We want you to know if you want more information, we want to be able to signpost where you can get that additional information. And because people have asked, the last thing we'll talk about very quickly is COVID-19 and some of the enforcement efforts that we've got around COVID-19. Okay, so just at a glance, this is the Alibaba Group as a whole. We have, at this point in time, we have many, many different subsidiaries that do many different things. Physical goods would be the one on the top left. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So e-commerce and commerce businesses where physical goods are sold between individuals or between businesses. And we're going to talk about the IP in that space. But just so you know, we also have a set of services companies. They deliver food, they organize holidays, things like that. We have an entertainment arm, the Chinese equivalent of YouTube. It's called Youku Tudou, and ticketing services, things like that. And then we have what we call infrastructure businesses, so payment providers, marketing, cloud solutions, things like that, and logistics, things like that. But what we're going to be talking about today is physical goods. Here we just got a couple of figures from our most recent annual financial report. I just draw your attention to what you can see in the middle about annual active consumers there. So I think it's just a snapshot of what Alibaba is. So in the financial year, which just ended in April, we had 960 million unique consumers that used some of those subsidiaries that we were just talking about around the world. And then how many of those are in China and how many of those are outside China? I think you can see there about 780 million of them used our China-based businesses, and about 180 used our international or cross-border businesses. So about a seventh or an eighth of our business still focused very much on China. And then within that China piece, you can see the vast majority of consumers are interacting with two platforms. One called Taobao, which is the C2C platform we've got in China. So that's going to be a big focus, what we're going to talk about today. And the other is Tmall. And Tmall is something that businesses choose to go onto to sell their products, and as a business to consumer platform. Very, very big and popular platforms in China. And then just on the right, you can see 35% year-on-year revenue growth for the group as a whole. So it's a very big, big and rapidly growing company. So we encourage all of you to work with us, both on the business, as I say, on the IP front as well, because they go hand in hand. Okay, so now on to the IP strategy. This is the pillars that we talk about as part of our Alibaba IP protection framework. Notice and takedown is the most basic one. It's the one David touched on. That's where you can send a notification to an e-commerce platform, Alibaba in this case, to tell us when your IP rights have been infringed. And then we have to take an action to make sure that we judge that takedown request based on the evidence provided, and take down the listing if there's a problem with it. And that's very, very important. We're going to talk more about that. But just so you know, we also have other pillars that we can provide more details on offline if needed. We have a proactive monitoring program. That's where we scan our own sites and we take down goods that we think are breaking various laws by ourselves completely proactively. At this point in time, we actually do more of that than we do reacting to notice and takedown requests, more than 10 times more proactive takedowns of goods by ourselves than as a result of the notifications from the notice and takedowns. We also have an offline enforcement program where we work with police authorities in China and around the world to be able to find the distributors and the manufacturers that are selling counterfeit products. And then we have ecosystem services, which is largely a China-based part of what we do, where we help companies to make sure that they have adequate knowledge and means to be able to exercise their IP in various ways. And then stakeholder collaboration is what we're doing today, which covers all of those areas, where we try and make sure that that brands are able to engage and benefit from these various parts of our strategy. But today, as I say, we're going to talk about notice and takedown. So here are just some of the results that you, as part of that program. What you can see on the left there is a number of IPP accounts. The IPP is the notice and takedown platform that we use. Every year we do webinars like this, and we do lots of events and lots of promotions where we try and encourage rights holders to use the IPP in order to protect their IP as much as possible. And then every year we see a rise in the number of accounts on the IPP. Last year there was an increase in 20%. Before that there was an increase in 30-something%. So we have more and more people, we're pleased to say, that use the IPP to do their enforcement every year. But the challenge there is that we have volumes, and then we have the requests coming through. So our constant battle is to find technology that can help us to be able to process those takedown requests as quickly as possible. Now, back in 2018, we established a 24-hour standard, or a 24-hour principle, and we were able to take down listings or process requests to take down listings within 24-hour period in the vast majority of situations, so in 96% of cases within 24 hours. But maintaining that 24-hour standard is harder, of course, when we have more and more IPP accounts. And last year, the IPP accounts, as I say, went up 20%. But I'm pleased to say we were able to maintain that 24-hour standard, which not only in China, but around the world is considered to be one of the fastest processing times. So we like to think that you will have a very positive experience doing your IP enforcement with us, especially in terms of the time that takes for us to act on your requests. And then here are some of the results that the consumer will see at the consumer end. I mean, this is what we ultimately want, I think, for brands and for us as a platform. We can see the number of complaints that are coming through from consumers about having purchased goods that infringe IP, or them having thought that they're buying one good and they were duped into buying another good. We get less and less of those every year as a result of that IPP platform and that broader strategy. So in 2019, we had 57% less products that we had to remove as a result of consumer complaints coming to us. And then we had also less and less refunds that we have to do as a result of those requests coming through from consumers as well. So that's the results that I'm sure us together, in cooperation with brands, want to be able to see. Okay, so now we're going to go into a bit more detail on that notice and takedown process that I'm encouraging you to all use. We want you to be able to use it as well as possible, as effectively as possible. And this is where I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Stephanie Yu, who's going to go into a bit of detail on that, and then I'll come back towards the end. Over to Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. Nice to meet everyone on this webinar. Oh, okay. So just as Mick said, Alibaba has 4 main pillars to protect IP. So notice and takedown is the first and one of the most important pillars to protect rights holders' IP. So basically, if a rights holder finds any suspected infringement on Alibaba platforms or marketplaces, you can report it to us. So here you can see the marketplaces that you can file complaints on. So thanks to David for very detailed explanation. So IP are territorial. For our China-facing marketplaces like Taobao, Tmall Global, and 1688, you do have to have your IP registered in China. And then for our international-facing platforms like Alibaba.com and AliExpress, your international IP rights will be accepted. And Lazada is operating in 6 countries, so you do have to have registration in those 6 countries before you can file complaints. And then you can enforce your IP on our platform, either it's trademark, copyright, or patent. But as our notice and takedown is based on IP protection, so distribution channel management, for example, if the product on sale is not authorized, or the price control are not basis for IP protection. And we have created multiple ways for rights holders to report suspected infringement to us, catering to the needs and capabilities of different rights holders. So we have an email address, ipr@alibaba-inc.com, that rights holders can send complaints to us. We also created an online form, so rights holders can fill in this form and submit it to us. We also created a online portal called IPP, the Intellectual Property Protection Portal, for rights holders to submit their complaints online. We do suggest that you use this IPP portal because it is the online online platform where we keep investing a lot of resources to make it more efficient and more convenient for rights holders to use. And as email and online form are processed manually, it might take longer than the IPP portal to process the complaint. And then here is how this IPP portal look like. It's ipp.alibabagroup.com. This is the front page of the IPP portal. And then there are several benefits of using the IPP. First of all, you only have to submit your IPR once. And then later, when you start to complain, you will find a drop-down list where you can choose the IPR that you have uploaded into the IPP and then start to complain. And then you can file complaints on multiple marketplaces like Taobao, Tmall, or 1688. Everything, all the infringement on all the platforms you can submit on this IPP. And then you can track the status of your complaint, whether it is still processing, whether it is accepted and the listing removed, or whether if something is not right and you need to provide more evidence to it. So you will find, you can track the status of your complaint and see if there is anything more you can do. And then there is also a data dashboard to show, how many listings you have submitted, how many was, removed, and how many has been restored because of successful counter notice. So you will have some information about your past reporting. And then you will also have access to a user center where you can see your account information, and you can find some resources for you to better understand our rules and policies. And then this is what you will do and what you will see if you find a potentially infringing listing on any of Alibaba's platforms. First of all, you need to set up an account. So you can set up your account as an individual. In this case, you would be asked to provide your personal ID like passport. If you register yourself as a business, then you'll be asked to provide your business registration certificate. And then you will be asked to provide at least one IP before you can start to complain. And then the third step is that you can file a complaint. A notification is a complaint or a takedown request, depending on how you call it. So you can start to file a complaint, and then after you submit your complaint, it will come to us, and then we'll process it. If the complaint is accepted, the seller will have a chance or opportunity to file an appeal to speak for themselves if something is wrong. And then it will take some time to, you will get the counter notice from the seller. And then after the counter notice is processed and then the counter notice is rejected, the listing will remain removed, and then penalties will apply to the sellers. And we, Alibaba provides for rules that is escalating penalties that are designed to increase the respect and the protection of IPR on our platform. And then this is what you will see on the IPP page after you log in your account. You can see on the left side of the column, you can submit your IPR, you can submit complaint, and there are also some other user guidance for you to choose. And then on the right side, you can find all the platforms you can choose. If we click on this Taobao platform marketplace, we will go to this page. So so you would have to choose the trademark which you believe have been infringed first. So you have uploaded your trademark in a second step while you upload your IPR, and then you choose complaint type, whether it is infringement on the product listing itself or whether it's infringement on the storefront. So you can choose. Next, you need to choose a reason code. So there is some reason. For example, is the one on there is obvious counterfeit, and there is always a very detailed explanation after the reason code. So obvious reason code means that the languages used by the seller has clearly indicate that it is counterfeit, or it's something like high highly replica, very high copy of something. So you can, in that case, you can get a copy, get a screenshot of the language where it says it's counterfeit. Or if you have chat with the seller through the trade manager, the online trade tool on Taobao, and then the seller admit that it is a counterfeit, then you can provide a screenshot of the chat history as an evidence to file a complaint. You can put in multiple listings at one time if they are the same kind of infringement on this box. But we do suggest you not put too many listings at the same time, because when our people review the complaints, they will look at the reason code, the listing, and the supporting evidence. So if there are too many listings submitted at one time, and then our people are not able to find the infringing information on each of the listing, it might be rejected. So we suggest that you put in infringing listings of the same kind and provide corresponding evidence to go with it. And you can also put in some statement as to why it is counterfeit on this box. And then here is just to let you know what you will see on this if you click on IPR management. So you can see you can update your IPR, you can remove your IPR. It's all on this IPR management page. And then after you submit your complaint, you can go to manage complaint and find all the your complaint information here. You can also track the status of the complaint. Okay, so this is the IPP user center. This is the data dashboard that we talk about, and this is all the all your account information, your user account. So for those accounts that has a good track record of reporting, we have created a good faith program, and account in the good faith program can enjoy a little more data than the general account. We'll talk about that later. And then you can find some useful information. For example, case studies. We've talked about the reason code, right? So there is, you need to choose the right reason code and provide the corresponding evidence to go with the reason code. So there is very detailed explanation in a case study here. And then there are some other materials and the resources that might be useful for you. This is the case study that I've just talked about. If you click on the case study on the right side of the user center, you will see this page. So these are all the different reason code that you can choose. And you can learn what is this reason code means here, and what supporting evidence is needed to go to submit the complaint. One thing I have to say that, when our people review the complaint, we do check if the reason code chosen matches with the evidence provided. If it's not, if it doesn't match, it will likely be rejected. So it doesn't mean that it is not counterfeit or it is not infringement, but it means that it doesn't match. So so if you choose a counterfeit reason code, but what you provide is copyright related evidence, so that doesn't match. In that way, it will likely be rejected. So we suggest you going through this document. We also have some video tutorials for you to know, how to register an IPP as an individual, how to register as an enterprise, and there are 8 videos in total, I believe. And then these FAQs are all available on the IPP front page. And then we created an SME support center at the IPP page and dedicate all the resources that SME can use on this SME session. So SMEs only need to go to this page to find all the resources available to them. And then we also create a Alibaba IPP handbook. It's a step-by-step user guide for the rights holders and to file a complaint, how to register your account, how to upload your IP, how to file a complaint. Everything you will need is on there, and it is in multiple languages. It's in English, it's Italian, Spanish, French, and so you can download it on the front page of Alibaba IPP platform. And last but not least, I will also would like to introduce this ICC Market Safe Expansion Program. So it is a program that Alibaba works with the International Anti-Counterfeiting Coalition, which is a non-for-profit anti-counterfeiting organization based in Washington, D.C. So this program basically is ICC help educate rights holders on how to use Alibaba's tools and the resources to protect their IP on Alibaba marketplaces. It's available to all rights holders. It covers all Alibaba's platforms, and this year is dedicated to SMEs. And then participants represent a wide range of industries like cosmetics, apparel, fashion, or a car, automobile, a lot of industries. And then ICC has China-speaking and English-speaking people, so they can assist with any language issue. And then ICC also enjoyed a good faith benefit. So any reporting through them will enjoy expedited takedown and registration process. And then we also have dialogue with ICC to see if there is any trend of counterfeit or any other issues that we can address together. So rights holders in this program can also participate in this rights holder working group and work directly with Alibaba. So if any of you is interested in joining this program, please let me know. I will connect you with ICC, and maybe you can have a call to learn more about the program. Yeah, and I'll hand it to Mick for COVID stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. And yeah, we can talk in the Q&A if people are more interested about the IPP or about the Market Safe program. So this is the final slide. Just a quick note about COVID-19, because we were asked about this. I know it's on everyone's minds at the moment. I think I would just say a few words that Alibaba are in a important position where we need to be able to make sure that PPE, such as face masks, are able to be accessible to consumers and businesses from around the world. But we also have a responsibility to make sure that the PPE which is available is safe and that people are buying what it is that they think that they're buying. So we just laid out a few of the measures that we have here. We have additional seller requirements. We don't allow new sellers on our international platforms, the ones that would sell into Australia, for example, that want to register a new store after January 2020, so when the crisis came about. We have additional requirements for them, such as the business licenses and additional reviews to make sure that they're licensed to manufacture those products. We also then look at the listing descriptions. So in order to prevent misleading listings, we have used our proactive algorithms, and we work very closely with industry stakeholders to make sure that we understand what the functionality of different types of PPE is, and that the product that they're selling matches what it is that they say that it does. So we would completely block, for example, people that claim that certain products will be able to cure certain types of diseases and things like that, to make sure that people don't get duped unfairly. So thirdly, we cut out inferior products via pricing. We do a lot of research and work with industry partners to make sure that we know how much certain types of products will cost. If they are suspiciously low, that could be an inferior product, which could cause problems, and we manage those. And then we also have to manage price gouging. So if people know that there's limited supply for a high demand product, we don't want them to jack up the price too high and be able to unfairly profit from this crisis. Offline cooperation, we work with law enforcement in China and around the world. They provide us with information about suspected manufacturers they think are doing the wrong thing. And we have helped the police in China, for example, to be able to do raids on certain manufacturing locations to try and cut that out. And then last but not least, we work very closely with the PPE producers themselves. We've closed down websites, for example, so not in Alibaba's e-commerce platform, but websites that use our cloud domain name registrar service that were selling suspected problematic PPE and got those taken down. And we even do public awareness campaigns, such as the one you can see on the right that we did with 3M, to let consumers know what they should look out for when they're buying face masks, to make sure that it's safe. So that's all I'll say on COVID, but if anyone wants to know more about that, we can talk about it more in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie and Mick, for providing the Alibaba perspective and overview of the significant support mechanisms and resources available for brand owners within the Alibaba ecosystem. From IP protection, monitoring and enforcement, which is growing in adoption, which is good to hear, and less consumer complaints. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to Jia Pei, Director Cross-Border Business Australia and New Zealand at Swiss Wellness. He has over 15 years of experience in consumer goods industry across Australia and China, specialised in strategic planning and growth strategy through omni-channel sales, with a track record working with Swiss, Jessica Suitcase, Unilever, Beiersdorf and Reckitt Benckiser. Please join me in welcoming Jia Pei.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for Global Victoria for hosting the event, and it's a great pleasure for Swiss Wellness to be involved to demonstrate and communicate with the rest of the industry about our practice on the IP protection and how important it plays a critical role in your expansion in China cross-border e-commerce business. And also want to thank the time of our fellow speakers. Thanks for your time to provide such a great insight and practice to all the audience and regarding to the IP protection here. And a little bit about myself. I joined the Swiss in 2018 and moved to Australia in 2014. I had a little bit experience in on the ground in China with e-commerce through various FMCG, the consumer goods companies, as well as after I moved to Australia, my experience is predominantly lent into the VMS, vitamin and mineral sectors, the health supplement segments in Australia, leading some of the companies like Sanofi, Consumer Health and Swiss Wellness to sell the product, expand the brand and the category offers from Australia to China. Like a lot of, like David and Stephanie and Mick mentioned, IP protection or the think about IP is probably one of the first thoughts I encourage all the audience to really think about before you move into China. Swiss probably has a different journey. As a commercial frontliner, we started 50 years ago in Melbourne. Today, our headquarters is still in Melbourne. We're still a Victorian-based company. Most of our intellectual property is still generated from Victoria to communicate or broadcast it to the rest of the world. So when it comes to China, it's slightly different. We do have the benefit or the opportunity to support it by our parenting company, HH Group, who headquarters in Hong Kong. So we have built a quite significant size of team on the ground in China to support our IP protection. But I can't emphasize enough, echo David's conversation at the first section. Our experience in China, actually, we also learned quite significantly on IP protection. Just like David mentioned, no matter your first step, your current step is selling through local Chinese, Australian-based Chinese community directly to China, or potentially you want to upscale your business from directly to China through the cross-border e-commerce platforms, or even the next step to register, get into China as commodity goods. IP is definitely the first way to think about. Personally, I have an example. We actually experienced one brand because of our house of brand approach. We actually have one niche brand in the history who we haven't really started about to register the IP in China, and find out a lot of Chinese Australians started to pick up this product, set to China, and later find out we don't have the brand registration in China, and it caused quite a bit of trouble when you're actually planning your next growth phase. So that's a really good, valuable lesson to learn. So again, echo David's point. This is, if you're really serious about the business extending in China, this is probably your first step to think about. But talking about IP, as a lot of team or guest speakers already mentioned, probably a lot of business operators or business owners always think about your brand, your product registration. To Swiss, it's actually another way around. with our one of our key important channel partners, Alibaba support, our concern or our current challenge is not necessarily heavily lying in brand registration or the counterfeit product. We did put a lot of measurements in terms of authentication, applications, packaging material to make sure consumer can easily find out if they're actually purchasing a authentic product from Australia or actually a counterfeit product. The counterfeit product risk in China for Swiss at the moment is pretty minimal. Our challenge pretty much is coming from our relationship with all the global ambassadors we're currently working with. All the global ambassadors, no matter it's our beloved Alex Derminor or Chris Hemsworth or Nicole Kidman, they are the face of Swiss. They are also representing our spirit, our attitude, and also our brand image in China. A lot of times, what we really want to be careful with is how we leverage the right image in front of the consumer, in front of the channel partners. And Alibaba system had been playing quite a bit significant role in this practice. They're not only in practice protect your brand, your product, also your creativity. So what I'm demonstrating in front of everyone here is if you actually have very specific creative or key visuals, you can actually get it protected through Alibaba system. I'm pretty sure Stephanie and Mick through their team can give you a lot more information how to do that. But this is a key part to maintain the brand image, maintain the brand attitude, and offer towards the consumer-facing side of the business. So far, we have been, Swiss has officially entered China since 2016. And with our acquisition with HH Group, our business has boomed from about $200 million back to several years ago to 2019, we are actually globally an $800 million business for this part globally. And a huge part of this is actually contributing to the vitality and engagement through our channel partners in China. And Alibaba is one of the key channel partners we're working with. Through the journey, I think Alibaba understands Swiss demands, or more importantly, as a brand owners, our concerns and our challenges. So they did have built a brilliant IP protection system and service system to communicate efficiently with all the brand owners. But bear in mind, this is a very, very handy or time-consuming process. For Swiss, our practice is we actually have a team regularly checking, scanning through Alibaba website to identify if there's any potential risk in terms of branding, product registration, creativity, and all sets of intellectual property risks. And we can maintain a very timely and responsive conversation with all these rule breakers, but more importantly, directly with Alibaba and other e-commerce platforms. How important it is. By end of 2019, the breach to or the misuse of our global ambassador's image on Alibaba for Swiss is the risk is kept at minimal. So we can actually efficiently leverage all their information, content, and all their endorsements at the same image to China. I guess everyone will agree, the business, such a big business as Swiss, it's important for us to keep it consistent. And this is also our task, to deliver our vitality and a positive attitude towards not only the Chinese consumers, but also our Australian fellow consumers, and to make sure we always deliver the best quality of content and product for all of you. So if you want to reach out, I'm happy to take you through a bit more details about how Swiss's approach. But as I mentioned, probably key information for everyone, for all the participants and audience for your time. Really think about your IP protection before you expand into China, and definitely leverage all this available resources from the embassy, from all the fellow speakers today to support you through the journey. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pei, for providing insights into Swiss's China engagement and IP approaches, and as your business has grown in the market, how you've really changed emphasis of the IP approach to product authentication, to global ambassadors, and protecting creativity to reduce misuse. So some really, really important insights there as well, and the importance of that partnership that you have with Alibaba. So thank you very much. It's time now for the Q&A part of today's event. And this is a great chance for you to ask a deeply experienced group of panelists their questions, or your questions, and getting their insights. So we have all of our panelists who have presented today who will be on the panel. And if you do have any further questions, again, for you to submit those through the Q&A function, or the Q&A icon at the bottom of the Zoom window. And I think I'll kick off first with a question in relation to the consumer. And this is actually for Mick and Stephanie, just in relation to the importance of consumer trust of both Alibaba and brands. You know, how much are the activities by Alibaba being driven by the importance that consumers placed in trust in the products that they buy on your platforms? Sorry, Mick, you'll need to unmute yourself, please.
You got my video, you don't have my mute. Yes, absolutely. Without trust, we wouldn't have e-commerce, frankly. When we, you know, from the very beginning, people would be in the habit of going into a physical store, meeting with someone face to face, developing a trust on a human level, seeing a product, feeling a product, looking at it, and then making a purchasing decision. The challenge with e-commerce is that people don't have that option. They see something online, they're buying something from someone they've never met, they can't meet, and they're buying a product which says that it's something, and they're not able to verify it themselves. So that is the challenge that we've worked with. But in the 20 years of Alibaba's existence, we've come up with various ways of making sure that consumers are at the heart of what we do, and it's one of our core values, and it has to be. So from the very beginning, we had an escrow system. So we had to, the goods would arrive, they would be verified by the person that got it, and then the money would be released to the seller, and that was the most basic one. Starts going back 20 years ago, but now we have very sophisticated big data analysis of consumers, and making sure that they have the best experience possible. But I showed you, I had one slide on it, as you saw, about the number of refund requests we get as a result of IP infringements, for example. And we also have lots of metrics around the quality of the goods received, how long it takes them to get it, whether what was on the listing description was the same as what they received. And then we have a system for making sure that all of that is built into how well the store's rating is, and that of course affects how well they can do business. It affects where they show up in the search results rankings, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, the consumer experience is absolutely central to the way the entire platform is organized. Stephanie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. We've got a question from Alistair to David. Do you think that the recent changes to China's IP registration processes, for example, requires a registration agent and puts in penalties for bad faith registration, will be effective to slow down bad faith trademark applications?
Yeah, good question. So a little background: in the past year, mostly in 2019, there was some legislative changes to the trademarks law to try to better tackle bad faith registrations. Where they're in effect now, and we're just starting to see the first lots of cases come out. Interestingly, some of the first cases have been around COVID-19, with people applying, some of those applications of people trying to get trademarks for things related to COVID-19 and related to the hospitals being handled under these measures. I think it's a bit too early to say. We've seen changes in the past, amendments in 2017. We hoped we were going to make more of a difference that didn't. So we'll have to see what happens in practice, but I think it's looking good. I think it's optimistic. There is acknowledgement of the problem and there are efforts to tackle it. It might take a little bit of time before they get there, but the signs are looking good. In the meantime, though, early registration is still the easiest way to simply avoid the legal problems of tackling a bad faith registration.
Thank you very much for that. So I've got a question. David, we've got quite a few questions for you. We've got a question from Lay in relation to trends. So has your office received a lot of IP protection related requests from Australia in recent years? And what is the trend of those requests? Has there been a big increase? Has there been a steady growth? And so on. So if you could just give some indication as to the volumes of the interest or the support that's required by Australian business.
Sure. So I've been doing this for about 3.5 years now, and I think requests have been pretty steady, constant flow of requests, handled several hundred to date. What probably has changed a bit over time is the level of sophistication. So initially we were getting more very basic requests for information. I think as we've increased our own online resources and our messaging along the lines I've given today, more people are putting in the protections they need, and then we're getting some more advanced requests about enforcement and about other aspects of protection. So yeah, constant flow of inquiries. I think what I've seen as being positive is people doing the right things, and then getting more advanced requests.
Thanks a lot, David. I've got a question for Pei, and in relation to registration of Chinese brand names. We had a discussion prior to this session. In the situation, there are companies, I'm not talking about Swiss now, but there are companies that they register their English brand name, trademark, and then they trade for a period of time. And then without having a Chinese brand name registered or even created by the company, customers and people within the industry will start to make up and develop a name for your brand, regardless, Chinese brand name, and it tends to stick. And then when you actually want to register, you lose control of that. What's the experience of Swiss been with your Chinese brand name? Because you've only recently registered that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. Swiss is probably at a different landscape or spectrum regarding to how we balance this English name, our global asset, as well as our customized local asset for Swiss. Swiss has been popular, or has opened it up in China since 2012. They're almost 8 years now. And we actually only until end of 2019, we developed or confirmed our Chinese name in China and finished all the process to make sure we have a Chinese name. There are different perspectives in this practice, I think. Through the journey, typically as a commercial operator or marketer, I would recommend to think about your Chinese name, your translation, how you want your Chinese consumers to remember your brand upfront. Typically, what we find out is most of the Chinese consumers, they're not English sufficient. So even if we actually Swiss has been a really popular brand or brand name in Australia, most of the Chinese consumers cannot pronounce or remember Swiss. However, at the same time, we also want to keep the authenticity of a Australian-made, Australian origin brand. So we don't want to create too much dilution regarding to the name and to confuse our consumer, and also create some not unnecessary challenge regarding to our brand authenticity. But as the business really grow up, we quickly find out we're at a tipping point to engage more of the Chinese consumer at a vast majority scale. We probably really need a common language with them. My recommendation to all the audience today, definitely think about your Chinese name upfront, because even if you don't want to proactively communicate from day one, you probably will need to do it as your business grows. second of all, a quick tip. I think David or even Nick mentioned a little bit on that. A lot of Chinese, Australian-based Chinese consumers or daigous, they start to create a lot of nickname about your brand. It's also worth considering all this name. Definitely put it as option for your brand name, because that's how your Chinese consumer really remember your name, remember your brand, remember your product by.
Thank you very much for that. I've got a question now for David again. If there is a bad faith registration, what would be the best way to tackle it? You mentioned a few long court cases. Are the bad faith applicants usually angling for a settlement? If so, are there agents who could help you to handle the negotiations?
Yeah, so the motivation is generally to get a payout. So people usually are angling to register something and then sell it back to the legitimate owner. In some cases, they're looking to use it as cover for their own knockoff or counterfeit products. But yeah, it can often be pragmatic to try and negotiate an outcome like that, sale or something. And Chinese trademarks agents are generally very experienced in doing that. So the Chinese trademarks agent can do that for you, either going directly or through your Australian trademarks attorney. Regarding tackling bad faith applications, there's this new legislation I mentioned before, which is in place. So people are working out the best approach to tackle under that. There are certain circumstances to make it easier. For example, if this is like a former distributor or someone you've had a business relationship with who's applied without your authorization, that's grounds where you're much more likely to succeed than if it's just a sort of targeted application by someone you have no knowledge of. So it really depends on the circumstances, but yeah, the trademarks agent can advise you on the best approach and likelihood of success.
Thanks, David. And we have time for one more question, and this is from Tim, and it's a question for David. And Tim says, I often hear people both here in China advise Australian businesses intending to enter the Chinese market, don't worry about IP, you just need to outcompete everyone else, including counterfeiters. How would you comment on this advice?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So it depends on the product. So if you're looking at selling consumer goods into China, there's so much value in the brand that IP protection is really critical to protect the brand. Where people talk about sort of staying ahead of the curve, innovating ahead of infringers and things like that, usually in fast-moving technology sectors, where, for example, applying for a patent where it might take 3 years or so to get examined and granted, technology may have moved on by then. When it comes to technology, there is some merit in trying to keep ahead of things by moving quickly, but I don't think that means you just throw away any other attempts to protect IP. I think any company operating in China, protecting the brand with a trademark is absolutely critical. Setting up the other protections, be it copyright, patents, or depending on the product. So by all means, try and if you're in a fast-moving technology sector, try and stay ahead and make it hard for people to copy you, but don't neglect the other protections that will be complementary to that.
Thank you very much, David. And I'd like to virtually put my hands together, and for everyone here as well, to put your hands together for our speakers today for their time and sharing their knowledge, insights and experience. So thank you to David, Mick, Stephanie and Jiapei. Today's session has provided us with some really practical and valuable insights. So a couple of things and themes that resonated. There's a lot to consider and a lot of differences to the Australian IP environment, and need to leverage resources available like IP Australia and get professional legal advice. It's a market where things can go wrong, and starting that protection process early and making it an important task in your China business journey is important. As David mentioned, you may already be selling in China through Daigou channels without you even knowing it. When you do start selling on the online platforms such as Tmall or Tmall Global, there are platform-based mechanisms to proactively support protection, and these should be used as part of an IP strategy mix. It's also in a platform's interest to provide quality, reliable, and genuine products to their customers. There have been lots of lessons, positive and also some who have learnt the hard way within the Australian business community about trademark registration, IP protection in China. And often a lot of that is around bad faith filings and in relation to first to file registrations and the differences where IP has been breached, or through bad faith filings, brand owners are effectively locked out from the market or put in a compromised commercial situation. There are successful approaches available, and today's learnings are great insights on what you should and should not do and how you can go about getting the right support that you need. So a little bit just about us, and Asialink Business focuses on building practical Asia market-related capabilities through the delivery of best-in-class capability development programs, research and market insights focused on Australia's engagement with Asia. Please do reach out to us to discuss how we may be able to support your Asian and China market engagements. I'd like to thank our partner for this event, Global Victoria. The Victorian e-commerce network is a fantastic initiative to provide knowledge and insights on e-commerce, crossing borders from India to China and topic areas from digital marketing to IP, with the view of supporting Victorian businesses to take advantage of global e-commerce opportunity. A special thanks to both George Descala and Elizabeth Moffat. And finally, thank you all for your attendance today and for your participation in the questions. And please do stay tuned through the website, Global Victoria website, as to upcoming Victoria e-commerce network events. We hope that you have found this event valuable. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.